Dear global students, welcome to Econ 241 or Global Economic Issues. I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself. Um, I'm Dr. Sudesh Mujumdar. I chair the Economics and Marketing Department here at the University of Southern Indiana. I'm also an associate professor of economics. So I joined the university in 2001. My background is entirely in economics. I have a bachelor's degree in economics. I have two master's degrees in economics in different areas of specialization, and then I also have a PhD in economics from the University of Cincinnati. So, I've been in economics all my life. I guess this is, um, due to maybe my dad, who's also an economist, and I don't know if this was by design or, because my dad always said, you're free to choose any major. You can specialize in whatever you want. But the only books I found around the house were econ books. So I don't know if this was his strategy to guide me into economics. But anyway, somehow my sister managed to stay away from economics. She's an architect, and so it was always interesting dinner table conversations. My dad and I we'd be debating about some absolutely exciting issues or topics like monetary policy, right? Of course, yawn, right? I mean, that's what my sister and mom would leave the dinner table in about 1 minute once my dad and I started arguing about monetary policy. So, and that's sort of the real challenge with economics, right? I mean, many of you I'm guessing many of you have had some econ course, econ 208 or 209, principles of micro or macro, or but think back about your first experience with economics. Maybe you had this in high school, and maybe it was taught with someone with not a lot of solid training in economics. Maybe it was often when I ask students who taught you economics in high school, they often say it was my basketball coach or soccer coach, and so nothing wrong with that, but there's only so much sort of they could bring to the subject if they're not trained in the subject, right? Right. So it's like you're saying, hey, I don't have any training in being a football coach, but and so what if I were to go ahead and start training your football team, right? It'd probably be the worst season you ever have in history. So that's sort of the point is that it's okay for someone not trained in economics to teach economics at the high school level, but someone not trained in a certain sport, I guess they wouldn't be that happy about getting this person on. And so usually, and I sort of hear this even when I go to parties or cocktail parties when they introduce me to I'm usually introduced as of course when they ask me what I do, say I'm a professor, and that's strike one already. So professor equals boring, right? So then what do you teach? Well, they probably give me another shot. Maybe it could be interesting, right? And then say economics. That's sort of when I get that violent reaction. Economics, that was my worst class ever. And at this point, I might as well leave the party. And that's sort of the challenge you have. It's not something that you had a good first experience with. So it's for us to try to overcome that baggage, right, that you come in with. So and we'll try to in this course to see if we can make it slightly more interesting. Maybe we'll try to maybe get over that perhaps not so good experience that you had with economics. So that you've already gotten a sense of my background in economics. In terms of academic background, I've also have considerable experience in practicing economics. So I've done lots of consulting work. You might know some of the local companies like Holiday World. I've done consulting for them, Vectron. I've also done consulting work for some internationally. I've done some work for the government of India. I was also a visiting scholar at the Reserve Bank of India, which is the Federal Reserve, like the Federal Reserve here in the U.S. So I've also got that. So I've got I've got sort of one leg in academia, one sort of leg in the practice of economics, and so that's helped for me to become sort of a much better academic and or a much fuller academic, so I can clearly see sort of the practical issues involved in implementing a certain idea, or how exactly different kinds of economies work or institutions work, and sort of on that point, I've also lived in many different countries, and that's sort of relevant from the point of view of this global course. I was born in India, and then we moved to this country in Africa called Zambia, and then we were in this small island. You might want to look this up if you get a chance. It's called Mauritius. It's a small island near Madagascar. We lived there for about 4 years. So if you're thinking of any nice honeymoon destinations, I'd strongly recommend that. Nice beaches, and then we moved sort of back to Bombay, and then back again. We moved to a country in Africa called Tanzania. We were there for some time, and then we were in Belize in Central America. So, living in all these countries, it's given me a very upfront view, or I should say up close and personal view of how things work in these different economies, how different institutions work, how the sort of people interact, what kinds of incentive mechanisms work to produce what kinds of outcomes. So I'll try to bring all of that experience into our global economics issues course. So it's one thing to sit out to read a book and get a sense for how things are working, but it's quite another to have someone who's already, quote unquote, been on the ground and give you a sense for how things work in different countries. So that's another sort of value added that I bring to the course. Anyway, I'll shut up for now. I think I've gone on for too long about myself, but that's what happens when I'm in front of the camera. I get carried away. But welcome again.